dark and so foreboding, and they're oh so very wide. They are fear and blind suspicion, they are apathy and pride. They are dark and so foreboding, and they're oh so very wide. Let us build a bridge of music, let us cross it with a song. Let us span another canyon, let us right another wrong. Oh, and if someone should ask us where we're off and bound today, we will tell them building bridges and be off and on our way. Oh, and if someone should ask us where we're off and bound today, we will tell them building bridges and be off and on our way. We will tell them building bridges.
We will tell them building bridges and be off and on our way. Thank you, Bill Staines. You're listening to Bridges Programming, Wednesday World Call In. Please don't hesitate to figure out how to call into this program because we're not sure how to tell you to do that. I'm Jeff Bella. Sitting next to me is Susan Comont. And on the phone with us is the illustrious Dennis Carius. Hello, Dennis. How are you?
Oh, hello, Jeff. Good. Hi, Susan.
Hey, Dennis.
It's great to be illustrious.
You are illustrious. You're very illustrious.
And it looks like we're live, broadcasting live now. And the topic on today on World Call In is terrorism. And Susan will bring up some. She had notes on all this stuff.
Well, I can get us started with the summary.
The summary, yeah, we'll do the summary,
and then you can take off from there. The question that was the title was a question: why do some people commit acts of terror? And so then went on to say, we could also be asking, why do nations commit acts of terror on each other? Isn't this what war is? Isn't this what economic sanctions are? Isn't our economic system creating acts of terror? Does our participation in the economics of profit and false scarcity make us accomplices? When a traumatized, marginalized individual becomes a terrorist because their survival is threatened and their family has been murdered, it doesn't take much imagination to understand why they might lash out in an insane way. Everyone has a breaking point. Why isn't mainstream media having this conversation? Why aren't they talking like us? Are they tools of the current economic system, using half-truths and half-lies? To calm us, to confuse us,
go out and shop, go out and buy.
Misleading many for the benefit of the few. And there was something very interesting that I heard, actually it was on NPR, and they were actually trying to reveal something that they don't normally have the courage to do, which was, and I have to, commend them on that, because they're trying sometimes,
person.
And they don't repeat these, these broadcasts a lot, the ones where they're actually hitting on something that's, more true, as Dennis would say, or more truthful. And they were saying, around the same time or at the same time that the terrorist acts were occurring and people were being killed in Paris, horrible tragedy was occurring there. There was another one occurring in, I think it was Lebanon. And it wasn't covered by the press. And so they were explaining why some acts of terror in some parts of the world are covered and others are, because they were actually trying to say, and that it's because they're not traveling to those places for vacations. They don't, it's not going to affect the economics. It's not going to be a problem with our stock market in the morning. That's why it's not covered. I mean,
Right.
it's incredible that you know, it really boggles my mind. It makes my brain freeze when I think about these things. But you know, and I've been this morning, I've done this in the past too, but I was refreshing my mind about you know, where the fighting is occurring, where France and US and Russia and all these countries are it's very confusing what's going on. Some of the cities like Ramadi are in Iraq. It's a very strategic city that leads into Syria, and then there's Palmyra, Palmyra, that has been recently attacked and being defended. That's in Syria. There are places where, I mean, it even, there's an article that I was reading here earlier, and I'll read some of it. It's confusing for the people who are actually trying to cover what's going on in these areas, and what the atrocities are. But we know that the atrocities are occurring because there are hundreds of thousands of refugees leaving Syria and Iraq.
Right.
And so
I
know.
want to bring out. This is not conjecture or it is not conjecture on our part. It is as obvious. It's not just what's the word I'm looking for? There's two words. It's obvious, and there's just conjecture. It's obvious that people are dying. It's obvious that people are
leaving their country.
This is not something we're imagining. We can't tell you that it's untrue. This is things that we believe that's happening because most people, the media can't cover it up. They can't change it. It is not. It is not. I just went back.
You can't hide it.
I just went back on the words I always use. One is subjective. It's not subjective. It's objective. You can see it. It's in front of your face. You can't change it. You can't change certain facts. The fact is, if someone drops a piece of plate glass from someone on a second-story building, it's fact. You're going to get cut badly in most cases. That's not conjecture. That is fact. If you walk in front of a truck, you'll get killed in most cases. Can happen where you don't, but in most cases you do. We live 80 years of age. That's fact. Some live longer, some live less, but 80 is close enough. We need a certain amount of food and water and shelter. Those are things of facts. You can't change them, and we can measure those facts. And the reason why I'm bringing them up now is I want to tell you that this is brought to you by the Human Renewable Energy Measure. And this is why we feel as though that measurement will change the world. That measurement that's based on energy factual units will change the world. And that's where we're coming from. We want to make sure that we stop killing one another, we stop starving one another. And I'm going to get into the fact that terrorism is in many, many forms. Some are more visual than others.
More obvious, yeah.
More obvious, and some are not. And I was talking to Dennis earlier. Remember what I said, Dennis, earlier? Whether I starve a country to death or people in my country to death or chop their heads off, who is more evil? One way we're killing them by chopping their head off, and the other way we're killing them by starving them to death and taking away their life slowly. Which is more evil? That's, again, it's subjective. It's not an objective thing, but the bottom line is we're still killing people. That's one of the points. Go ahead.
And that's good, Jeff. Thank you for mentioning that. And it's interesting because we really have to understand what's going on out there. And it's great that you're doing this show because mainstream media is not, telling us all the truth. I feel like I'm being brainwashed by some mainstream media. So it really is important to tell people that we have to reform things if they ever get dysfunctional.
Well, it's very interesting. On NPR this morning, Susan brought that out. We listened to several different news things in the first thing in the morning to see what their propaganda is. And like one little girl said yesterday, she was 15 years old, said, "I'm not going to let terrorism make me afraid." Well, that's the propaganda that they put out. I mean, but
right.
I mean, that's propaganda. I mean, that's she's mimicking someone else's words, like we talk about dysfunctional governments, or we talk about 99% or the 1% is. Those are other people's words that we hear, and we have a tendency of mimicking that.
Well, that's not the bottom line. The bottom line is why are people being marginalized to the point where they'll commit acts of terror?
Right. Well, they want to blow themselves up.
Yes, this is an extreme reaction that is a extreme act of desperation, and I mean, we know hundreds of thousands of people have been are leaving their homes because of the bombing, the disruption of their cities, but the trouble is, and this is an author here that I'm reading. He published an article on the website Al Jazeera, and his name is James Densolo. He writes on Middle East politics and security issues, and is a research associate at the Foreign Policy Center, just to give you some background. But he says, even a person who is covering these, the events in Syria and Iraq and what's happening with ISIS, he says here, the fog of war that is swirling across the Middle East has merged with apathy and disinterest from Western policymakers and public toward the region, resulting in continual surprise by the course of events. Then he goes on to say that the way that the Arab Spring of 2010 was received, it was said to be unexpected, and that the loss of Mosul a year ago was, quote, a surprise. Kobani went from being a town nobody heard of to a decisive location in the battle against ISIL, which is also another way of saying ISIS. There's so many references to these groups that are different names that's confusing. I mean, this is me speaking. Okay, and then the narrative arc over whether Assad is resilient or in decline seems to move on a daily basis. He is the president or whatever of Syria. Just because, and he's saying here, just because we stop paying attention doesn't mean things aren't happening. Although ISIL is a year old at the start of the Ramadan, they were born out of the chaos that followed the U.S. invasion in 2003. See, this is the thing. We invaded, we displaced in Iraq the normalcy, the places where people can feel safe and raise their families. I mean, these are people just like us. They have the same, as Jeff was saying, the same desires, the same needs for security, food, shelter, education. And we need to educate ourselves about these, that this is true, that this is basic. We need to understand that what we're doing is terrorism. We are invading other countries and disrupting their normalcy and their, because why? Well, okay.
We want to control those countries.
This town of Ramadi is central. As you look it up, anywhere on the internet, it is in Iraq. Here, I'll just read you a little bit of history. Ramadi occupies a highly strategic location on the Euphrates and the road west to Syria and Jordan. This has made it a hub for trade and traffic, from which the city gains significant prosperity. I mean, this is a city similar to New York City,
Right.
and it's being bombed into oblivion.
Because we need to control it.
Its position has meant that it has been fought over several times during the 2 world wars and again during the Iraq War and Iraqi insurgency. It was heavily damaged during the Iraq War, when it was a major focus for the insurgency against occupying United States forces. Following the withdrawal of the U.S. forces from Iraq in 2011, the city was contested by the Iraqi government and the extremist group Islamic State, which they refer to here as ISIL. And that's the same as ISIS. And that's the same as IS. I mean, all these, why do they keep changing the name of whatever this group is that's trying to resist or do extreme, I don't know. I don't know what's going on with that. But that gives you some idea of why everybody wants this city, and that this is extremely important location, strategic, etc. Okay, so then you're going into Syria, where they're talking about a city called, let's see, what is it here? There's another city, Palmyra, Palmyra. So why are they after that? That's in Syria. And it turns out that it's strategic because that's where, the electrical grid is located. And of course, the President Assad is very concerned about that.
His grid stays up so his people don't rebel.
Okay, and of course, that's not been affected. So that's another strategic, location. The UN, and this is from another article, the UN has said that 1/3 of Palmyra's 200,000 population, 200,000 people have fled. And ISIS militants use social media to show themselves posing amid ancient columns, etc. We've heard about that on the news. We hear about that, the looting of the museums and the ancient treasures and all this, but we don't hear that this is another strategic place. And
because of the electric company.
And a huge city, and people are leaving, 200,000 or more people are leaving.
No, I want to give you an example. Supposing
you got to get the full picture.
I mean,
and we're not getting it from our news media.
Just try to picture this. Supposing they started, some major power, we became a weaker power, and they started bombing Manhattan Island to take control over the Hudson River and the eastern coast of the country. You would see people fleeing Manhattan because of bombs dropping like it was going out of style. I forgot how many millions of people are in New York City. But if they let bomb New York, and then look at bombing Albany or bombing Syracuse or Buffalo. I don't know. I don't know those numbers.
I should have compared.
But look at if you can.
You can do it yourself.
If you could compare any large city, and they start bombing
200,000, 300,000 people, and 500,000 people.
And then look at what we did in Africa.
1 million people.
15, 20 years ago in Africa.
But this is
we wanted to take over their natural resources. So we didn't physically go over there with our own troops. We paid money to a side, to a thug, to create a war, and they called it a genocide because of religion. But it wasn't about religion. It was about getting natural resources and territory, or controlling the territory in Africa to get their natural resources, their oil, their uranium, their cobalt, and we killed 6 million people. If that's not terrorism, what is? That's terrorism, and we, as on the Western world, are responsible for that. I'm not saying that you and I are, and we should, and no one should retaliate for that, but we should take the responsibility
to understand what's going
in
on
in our economic system. We are devastating the rest of the Eastern world in some cases because of their oil, whether you own a stock of oil or you go out to get the cheapest possible price from a store, or you take advantage of your neighbor. It's still, we are creating acts of terrorism because of our economic system, and we can't get out of it. It's part of our upbringing. It's part of our life. We need to face up to that and figure out a way to change it. This is why
This
is why we suggest the human renewable energy measurement, so we can measure these things
within the
economic system and make sure all humanity has their basic needs met, and we stop the terrorism, we stop the wars.
We need to also demand of our media that they do, that they really give us much more information.
Well, they can't because they're controlled by the economic system. So they're not going to give us, you can demand all you want. You can demand of your politicians.
Okay.
And they don't do anything.
I'm going to give us some more information.
I just want to bring this out.
Yeah.
If you demand of your politicians and they don't do what you demand, they look like they're dysfunctional, but they're not dysfunctional. They're functioning very well for the very wealthy people, a small percentage of the world population.
Well, that's what capitalist economics does. That's its function, isolating power in the hands of the few. But let me go back to something, Dennis, before we lose the train of this thought about Syria and Palmyra. And I'm probably pronouncing that wrong, and I apologize. But this city where 300,000 or more people have left, they are refugees looking for some place where they can be safe and take their families, to raise their families, just like we're doing here. Everything is the same. But here, quoting, in Syria, forces loyal to Bashir al-Assad, that's the president of Syria, had committed to defend gas fields to the north of Palmyra that are essential to the nation's electricity supply. And that's not being stated. That's not being said.
They're not saying a word about
gas fields. These are strategic places. These are natural resources that are essential to the country that they're in,
and us.
And they are coveted by other countries. I mean, what is France's interest? What is Russia's interest? They want gas to keep flowing into Europe. They
keep the economic system flowing.
Or they don't want Russia probably doesn't want the competition. So they may not want that gas to come into. Who knows? I mean, because they've got their own
it's all about the economy.
It's very, very hard to parse this all out. We can
simplify this because it's all about the economic system and it's all about competition. If we say that we should cooperate throughout the world and we don't compete, we'll get much more done for the rest of humanity and we'll stop most of the wars. It's not complicated. It's just about the economic system has been going on for 5,000 years. And it's been about competition. And it's wrong. But before that, before the 5,000 years, before the abundance, we always were a species of cooperation. That's how we grew so well. Then when we got into fossil fuel and we had abundance, then we got into competition. We had abundance with machines and plows. Like there's a group out there called plowshares to beat our weapons into plows to help humanity, not fight with them, but to help each other. That's what plowshares are about. Please don't hesitate to look at our past programs to talk about things like this. Okay, go ahead, Sue.
Well, I'm just going to go on in the same article. There's a reference to how Ramadi in Iraq, had been holding out. And he goes on to say, had been a holdout in the heart of the country's most hostile province, a place where local Sunni leaders allied with the Shia-led government and its militia proxies to keep ISIS at bay. That too changed in less than 72 hours of clashes where top-tier troops and tribes posed little resistance. In both cases, once the battle started going badly, state forces surrendered the cities to their fate, leaving large amounts of ammunition behind. So they're wondering, that where do terrorists get their bombs, their ammunition?
Right.
It's all there already. I mean, it's there because other countries have brought it in
and left it there.
And then they leave, and then they try to train the local people, and then okay, we're bringing you lots of guns and whatever you need to hold your ground here. Then if they get defeated, they leave. They don't take their ammunition with them. They don't take their everything with them. They can't do that. And so they, that's what, it's no surprise that these resistance groups or rebel groups or whatever you want to call them, the ISIL terrorist groups, that they're heavily armed. And there's a huge market for armaments, and always has been. Whenever there's wars, there are profiteers making money off of the situation, and they have no alliance to either side or to any side. They're just making money, and here we have economics again. I'm going to go back to the article in Al Jazeera by James Denislow, and it's not even reporters who are there. It's very hard for them to report on what's going on in these two countries, Iraq and Syria, right now. And he goes on to say, we continue to ask, who are the fighters of ISIL? Where did they come from? Where did they get their money? And more as if they emerged from a hole in the ground. It seems that the history of the Middle East, the complexity of its current conflicts, and the real difficulties in objective reporting from the front lines is combining with a war-weary apathy and distrust from Western audiences as to what positive difference they can bring to bear in the face of such grinding violence. Syria is the most dangerous place on the planet to be a journalist, and the grand rhetoric from all sides over claims of victories and inflicting losses are hard to verify. Replacing the vacuum of traditional media comes the citizen journalist and the slick spectator in slick, spectacular ISIL propaganda. Okay, I'm going to go on to say, in Syria, this is the same article, it's a 360-degree conflict with a regime backed primarily by Iran and Russia, facing down a multitude of enemies, both domestic and foreign, with the UN estimating 25,000 foreign fighters from over 100 countries. How can anyone make sense of this? I'm speaking now. It's confusing just to read his article here. Quote, the US-led coalition of 63 countries is targeting ISIL, but not the regime. From the air, while various actors drip feed weapons and trainers on the ground to parts of an opposition divided into an ever-changing multitude of coalitions and groups, constantly morphing, renaming, and rebranding themselves. No wonder people have switched off, unquote. But that is a danger. We can't switch off because we continue to feed with our economic aggression, the damage and the structure that is creating more and more tension, disrupting the life of hundreds of thousands of people. It is not, the answer isn't, close our nation's borders, stop letting refugees. That is not the answer. No. The answer is you have to provide what people need, and their
basic needs must be met. Otherwise, they die, and that's why they leave their country. Well, if bombs keep on dropping, they're going to leave. The problem is we need to stop doing it. And the economic system is self-perpetuating. The small percentage of the world population, the wealthy portion of the world population, continues manipulating the majority of the world population. And they keep on playing the same game, and we keep on following it. And we don't have a voice. So people without a voice, if they're strapped like we're not strapped in this country, or most people in the Western world are not really strapped. But the people in the Eastern world, or where this is happening, like in Syria and Africa, and the reason, and the question was asked today, how come the terrorists mainly come out of the Syria and the Middle East? And that's pretty simple. It's because that group of people understands real well that they're being persecuted by us because of our economic system. And their belief system is in such a way that they strongly believe that we are infidels because we're killing people. In their eyes, we are infidels because we are killing people through our economic system. So whether they behead us or we drop a piece of plate glass on their kid, it is irrelevant. The death is still the same. We are just as much terrorists as anybody else. We need to stop killing people with our economic system. And that's what the Pope was saying too. The economic system as it stands now is not working. It's not only killing other people around the world, but it's also poisoning our air, our soil, and our water. Okay. We need to stop this.
And speaking to what you're just speaking about, you know, understanding how the history of why people understand so well in these Arab countries what's going on and what their target is. Here in the same article, the author says, former U.S. intelligence operative Malcolm Nance reminded listeners of Democracy Now! Recently, quote, "Let's not forget history here. If you were a member of the Saddam Fedayeen at the age of 20 when the United States invaded, you'd be 35 years old right now, and you'd be a mid-level commander with 13 years of extraordinary combat experience under your belt." So people have been living from the age of 20, and that sounds so familiar, and I'll say why, in this circumstance of combat since the invasion of the United States in Iraq and the destabilization, complete destabilization. I mean, we were destabilizing Iraq with economic sanctions for 20 years before, for 20 years before we invaded. But now it's a combat situation, and these young people who were entering the army, as our young people do when they're 18 and 20, have had 13 years now of this, where they're very, very attuned to what needs, they've evolved in this environment, and this is all they know. And why I'm saying 20 years ago, what they called the genocides in Africa. All these names are tumbling into my mind. Rwanda and the Congo areas there. People who fled that to survive into the jungles. They've been there for 20 years, and children were born there. They're now, that's the environment. That's the the stresses they've been under as they've been growing up, and it has evolved. They've been imprinted by this, and they've learned from this environment and the stresses that are all around them.
It's going to take 2 or 3 if we can change the economic system to benefit humanity for basic needs met.
Right.
That's how we do GDP, not how much money we make, how well we make sure all populations have their basic needs met for 1 hour of work a day, because everybody alive has their basic needs met, but they're working 16 and 18 hours to get their basic needs met. That's slavery. And that's the problem we're running into. We need to make sure all humanity has their basic needs met.
And it's not, we can't wait till there's a horrible tragedy like what's being covered in the news now in France. That's like the tip of the iceberg. That's the most extreme thing that can happen, and that's the only thing that seems to get the attention of the world. Otherwise they say this is not about us. It's far away. I don't even understand what's going on over there. Why are these people so upset?
I just want to have you know that. Look at the news media coverage we got for 150 people or so in France and other parts of the world, by the way, at the same time were attacked by, it was sort of attacked by theoretically ISIS. But there's a reason why that happened. Let's look at that reason. But look at how it rocked France. It almost knocked their economy down. The planes hitting this country rocked our basic economy. Now, when the economy gets hurt, man, it really messes up those big guys.
Everybody remembers what the then President Bush
Go
said.
shopping.
Yeah, don't worry about it. Go to the
Go
mall.
shopping.
Go
now
shopping.
The next, and that's what the French president said too.
Right.
They're
Everything
worried
has
about
to
the
be
economy.
Normal. They just want you to be fearful.
But look at the damage of only 100.
Don't consider.
But look at
why this is happening.
But look at what 150 people have done. Died, and look at the news media coverage we're getting. But look at the thousands of bombs and people are dying in other parts of the world. The 6 million genocide in Africa.
Well, no, let's talk about that and also what's
happening in Syria.
Right.
What's happening, all these things. This is nothing compared to what we're doing to other people. And then forget it, even if we don't attack them. Just look at how much we're making them work as slaves just to stay alive. My God, man, don't you see what we're doing? And you can't deny it. If you just say that's the way it is, that's not good enough. We're going to keep doing this for another 5,000 years. It's been going on since the United Kingdom, since before the kings united. This has been going on forever. 5,000 years is not forever. I'm sorry. It's been going on for 5,000 years. But humanity didn't start like this. Humanity started within cooperation with each other, not
and the provision and providing of the basic needs.
Right,
that's what we understood.
Right.
Everybody has to have their basic needs met, and that was, you can say, oh, that's just a tribal thing, and I can't do that anymore. Well, that's not true. That's the basic understanding
of humanity,
that basic needs need to be met. You have to care for your community, etc. And this from the same article, to speak to what you were saying, by James Denselow, Denselow. He's saying, quote, "The roll call of destruction are figures so large to have lost meaning to a faraway audience. Some are now claiming 300,000 dead in Syria, and refugees and internally displaced persons are now over 10 million.
Unbelievable.
Yet the media cannot show the full reality of conflict deaths. So instead, we get, why can't they? That's my question. We get rubble, charred cars, and cities on fire, as well as exodus upon exodus. And then we get, it's in a way, it's amazing to me, with this many displaced people, this many dead, that there aren't more acts of terror all over the place, that are, it actually is amazing how much the human species can deal with and not crack or not break. They still have hope. They still think, we can get away from this. We can start our lives somewhere else. Though that's one of the most tragic things, one of the very most tragic things any individual or family has to face is to have to leave their country, and where they have everything is familiar to them, and go to another country in desperation, and try to hope for a welcome there that will make it possible for them to resettle. Anyways, In the West, and I'll go on with the article, the feeling that it is not our war, unquote, despite their leaders' assessment of threat and the increasing trainers, aircraft, and arms supplies involved. What really cuts home is when the news is about us, you know,
Or about
such
the
as
Western world.
when refugees interrupt people's holidays, etc. And of course, now he had written this article before the people were killed in Paris. So he would have mentioned that, I'm sure, too, that is the kind of thing that gets the Western attention, European, America, the nations that are so completely involved with the economics as it is, and don't see the ramifications of this, the horror of the kind of economics that we practice worldwide. And I don't know, I feel if I didn't think that there was a commonality, that there was a possibility of an understanding about that humans are capable of understanding.
We can come together
Yes,
as a species.
Exactly. If I didn't feel that this was possible, I would really, be giving up.
Well, the thing is, I want to have you know that we think
this is overwhelming. It's very overwhelming.
It's overwhelming because we face the fact as Western U.S. citizens that we are damaging, we are killing people every day. We don't want to kill people every day. We can't help it. Our economic system demands it of us. It's perpetuating death throughout the good part of the world. And we ask our politicians who we theoretically elect, but they're controlled by the economic system as well. So it's not going to change anything. This has been going on. It's a placebo that we elect the right person, it'll be better for all. It's not working that way. And that's what the Pope was saying as well.
We're getting really profound reactions from like the Pope Francis and other thinkers in history that we've been trying to bring them back, even though they're no longer
Bucky
living.
Fuller was talking about an energy unit for humanity. Nikola Tesla was talking about an energy unit, but they were missing something. We think we found in the Human Renewable Energy Measure, the HRM, and that a possible answer. We're not saying it is the only answer,
something
but
that's objective.
It's something that's objective measurement that all humanity has to have their basic needs met through an energy measure in a small amount of their life space, their lifetime, which is another measurement, just like gravity. It's very important to put this together. And once we do that, we may be able to change the way we do business. And the way we do business has to make sure. Dennis, did you want to say something?
I hear Dennis.
Dennis just wants to ask, where can people go online and learn more about HREM?
Go to THEHREM.org. We also have a nonprofit group that we started years and years ago called Renew the Earth that talks about renewable energy, and that, of course, and
about people doing good works in their communities.
Right, good work,
right.
Humanity. It's about helping people, and we just started the Young Marines there. That's a good thing.
An
award, and we started. We're going to do other awards with different groups who can get the HRM out there better than we can. We're doing the best we can. So if you look on your screen, I don't know if you could see that, Dennis, but do you see the scrolling on your screen about Bridges programming and Renew the Earth and the HREM, the Human Renewable Energy Measure? Do you notice that on your screen?
Yes.
So we try to scroll that. Now there's a way of doing it without this old-fashioned way of doing it. We have to learn how to do that yet. But we're learning on it. Now the other thing is, let's just suggest if we can just take the responsibility that it's not just the people who we call greedy or the people who are ambitious or the people who are multi-billionaires and want to be trillionaires, but we as an individual person, whether we are poor or rich, we are part of the problem because we won't take responsibility that we are killing people every single day of the week just by our actions in our economic world. We can't help it, so we're not bad people. We're not bad because we're doing it. We just have to figure out a way to change the way we're doing business, and that's what the HRM is about.
The way we're practicing economics.
And we're not saying that everyone should be equal either. That's not what we're saying. We're not saying that.
What do you mean equal in terms of what they?
Equal as far as.
I mean, not be individuals. I
right,
mean,
they should all be individuals.
On a certain level, we are all equal.
And if you want to work harder and make more, you should have that right as a human being to do that. However, you should never, ever, in the course of your life, working hard, being ambitious, kill another human being because of your ambition. That's what we're doing now. And the HRM it's basically a simple safety net that says all humanity for 1 hour of their life work would have their basic needs met, not their wants. Their wants makes them human. Your wants will be different than someone else's wants. And you have the right as an individual to work as hard as you want for those wants. But you can never allow our system to hurt another human being. And the borders that we have are artificial borders. They're borders that man-made. It has nothing to do with actual borders. It's a great way to say, well, they're on the other side of that river, and we call that river the Mississippi, or they're on the other side of the Hudson. But supposing I told you, Dennis, I'll give you a good for instance, right? You ready for this?
I'm ready.
Okay. We live on the west side of the Hudson, right?
Right.
Now, it's all New York State, but supposing I tell you everybody on the east side of the Hudson, and they have a lot of natural, we were going to take their natural resources because they won't give them to us easily. So I'm going to say, let's throw some bombs over there. And when they try to flee the area, we're going to kill them. Would that be a smart thing for us to do?
No, I would say that's wrong, but you're right. That is happening in this world.
Right. Only because of a man-made border. And we say those people on the other side of the river are no good, and they're vicious and they're evil. So that's a pretty much subjective idea on our part. Some of them may be not nice people, but some of them are very nice people. So why would we kill all of them? Like France has gone over there and bombed ISIS. But I guarantee you when they went over there to bomb ISIS, they killed a lot of young children and women and people who were not part of ISIS, which now they're going to create more problems because they're killing people for no reason. And they're trying to wipe out ISIS by doing that. And I guarantee you that will not happen. It may appear to happen for a short time, but nobody will forgive you for killing or maiming their child or their mother or their father. So it's really important to know that we are creating the problem. But it's very hard to accept that. It's very hard to look in the mirror every morning and say, I'm going to kill a couple of people today. No, I'm not going to physically chop their head off with a machete, but I'm going to kill them anyway because of my lifestyle. And once we realize that, we may be able to say, how do we stop that? And that's how we came up with the Human Renewable Energy Measure, because we can measure that all humanity has to have their basic needs met. For 1 hour of their life a day, that's all they've got, 80 years. So 1 hour a day with today's technology, their basic education, food, and shelter.
And Buckminster Fuller asserted that.
And Bucky, you're full of that.
Tesla asserted that. Pope Francis asserts this. This is understood.
But our mainstream media refuses to pick this up.
Well, if people are fearful, if people are distrustful, and that's what's being emphasized in the media, in the way that things are being covered. Fear. Don't be fearful. Well, you are fearful. And it's almost like two men. It's like they're saying don't be and do be. It's a confusing message.
It's called cognitive dissonance.
Right, exactly. And if your brain is all messed up with that kind of because that's one of our most basic instincts. That's in our lizard brain. The fight or flight reaction. that stops your cognitive reasoning from kicking in, and you can't stand back and try to assess the full picture of what is really happening, what is happening in a logical way, to assess it. Why are these acts of terror occurring? Trace it to the source. What are the events that led up to so many people being displaced from their homes? You weren't here at the time, but when you think of the numbers, Jeff, involved, people being killed, maybe millions. When you read the numbers, it's amazing that there are not more acts of terror going on. Really,
right? As a matter of fact,
all over, Europe or United States.
I think
the restraint involved is amazing.
I had the thought about that. The restraint in this country, because we have people who are try to get ahead, and they call their congressman, and we vote, and we think we got the right person in office, and then all of a sudden they bomb up another country, and then we have that in France, Germany, Switzerland, all over the world, and we just feel we're just living well enough. But in the eastern part of the world, especially where we really trying to control that part of the world for the economic system, is they also have a belief system that we as the Western world are infidels
or terrorists.
We are the terrorists, and they fight back. Then we call them terrorists. So before you know it, it's something like the V movie where he says, "You're V, no, you're V, or you're the terrorist, or you're the terrorist,"
right.
And they fight like this. It's a comical thing, but it's not a comical thing. We are killing people every day of the week by our not facing the fact that our economic system is killing a good portion of this world, and
not just the human species,
and only a few people. And I'm not calling terrorist heroes at all, but after a while, you've got to stop and ask yourself, why is somebody blowing themselves up? And it may be a religious thought, but it's really not. If people had their basic needs met, that means all God is giving them their basic needs met. So why are they killing anybody? So they're not getting their basic needs met, and they're blaming us for it and saying they're religious about it. There's more to this than the media is telling us. And we need to make sure our media, if it's not our media, then you be the media. You go out there and tell people about the human renewable energy measure. You be the media. Yeah. Don't count on mainstream media don't think you're going to vote somebody in who's going to change things. You're the person who has to take responsibility for the actions that we are causing as a species in the western part of the world. We are doing this, and I've never heard anybody saying this on the air, but this is just one program. I'm sure there are people out there saying the same thing as we are, and if we can bring them together and get more people out there to understand that we have to stop killing people in the name of whatever because of our economic system. Understand that our economic system is controlling all politicians around the world. It's our economic system that puts these people into position. It's our economic system that builds the planes and the bombs and the drones. It's our economic system that does this. It's our economic system that's controlling our media. We as a species, we as Westerners, got to stop our behavior in the economic world. If we are religious, if we're Christians, or if we're Jews, or if Muslims, even the Muslims are not bad people. It's just that they're getting a bad rap, like the Jews got a bad rap, and the Christians got a bad rap, and the Christians are also divided amongst themselves, and the Lutherans are divided amongst themselves. I mean, the Protestants are. Let's get together as a species and say we have to stop killing people, and we got to fix our economic system, not just in church and in our actual lives. We need to do this. Anyway, they don't call me a preacher for nothing. So, Dennis, what do you think?
No, I want to thank you for preaching. I'm really happy to be on this show with you and Susan. because it's good to get the truth instead of turning on mainstream media and getting brainwashed. Because I agree with you, when I hear that word terrorism, I put it in quotes. I think what makes them terrorists, end quote, is what's under the ground over there, that oil.
Well,
Dennis, it's
That's one of the
it's
things.
one
that
of the
people
many
are after,
things.
right.
We're after cobalt for our. I mean, how many people love their cell phones? I mean, you just walk into any store now in the Western world and part of the Eastern world, of course, and count how many people have cell phones. Every one of those cell phones uses cobalt in them, and we need that cobalt to make those cell phones work. So the big money says we got to get the cobalt from these poor nations, and we need it as a cheap price because we need the cheapest price we can get. So if we got to take it from them and pay them like tenths of pennies on a dollar on an hour, tenths of for nothing to get them to work for us to pull that cobalt out and control that cobalt. That's just one thing.
That's in the lake region of Central Africa.
Look at the batteries in our Priuses. Look at the material in that we have to get out so we have a more efficient car. I mean, and then of course we have to make money, so we buy stocks. Well, we have to get food, so we get the cheapest food we can because we can't afford restaurants of $50, $100 an hour when we go out for dinner. We like to have a change in our life. We want a good lifestyle. We're not saying we shouldn't have a good lifestyle, but it's so important to understand that we are responsible for the actions of our own selves, which are creating actions from the eastern parts of the world in an insane manner. We're acting insanely with our economic system, and therefore they're acting insanely back with a reaction of insanity. Whether we kill somebody by starving them to death or by making them work 16 hours a day or chopping their head off, it's still killing somebody. I mean, oh, look at those people, they chop heads off. Well, we're doing the same thing, but we're not doing it so blatantly. So the evil or the horror is not
as obvious.
But it's the same horror. Death is death. As a matter of fact, slow death is worse than quick death, and that's my personal opinion. But everyone's entitled to their own stupid opinion. That's my stupid opinion, and I thank you very much for listening to us. Dennis, I want to thank you very much for helping us with the programming. Susan, thank you.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Dennis.
No, I just want to thank you and thank Susan for telling the truth and educating.
We're just trying to put some more thoughts into the conversation, and everybody should contribute in this way.
If everyone starts doing this, we will have a better world.
Do your own research.
And that's what Bridges
try to understand.
And that's what Bridges programming is about. Thank you very much for listening. We'll be back again on Sunday on the front stoop, the largest stoop in the world, and we will be there shortly. Let me see if I can get this to work. Thanks again, Dennis. And this is by the Alien Folk Life. And thank you, Bill Staines, for Bridges.
Your neighbor's out of work because they closed the factory. You try to stretch your paycheck, but it's never quite enough. Oh, energy, energy. It all comes down to energy. You wonder where the money's gone. Well, here's some fuel for thought. It all comes down to energy. Fossil fuel affects our lives like ripples on a lake. Cars and farms and factories and trucks. Supplies go down and prices soar, our futures are at stake. And when it's gone, it won't come back and we'll be out of luck. Oh, energy, energy. It all comes down to energy. You wonder where the money's gone. Well, here's some fuel for thought. It all comes down to energy. We can get our energy from corn and grass and trees. Even trash converts to biofuels. Break loose from the stranglehold of oil companies. Renewables can fuel the world. We're here to spread the news. Oh, energy, energy. It all comes down to energy. You wonder where the money's gone. Well, here's some fuel for thought. It all comes down to energy.